I've explored ghost towns, asylums, and forest shrines. Nothing rattled me like that shack on Isla de las Muñecas. I was in Mexico filming for my YouTube channel. The island was perfect clickbait. An entire mangrove swamp covered in rotting dolls? It practically writes itself. I pulled strings with a local boatman, paid extra to stay overnight. The legend says Don Julián Santana began hanging dolls after finding a little girl drowned in the canal. He claimed her ghost haunted him until he died in the same spot. His old hut still stands in the center, crumbling, unstable. "You're not allowed inside," the boatman said. "It doesn't like guests." At sunset, the island changed. The air got thicker. Sound seemed to vanish, like the dolls soaked it in. I recorded B-roll, narrated my intro, then set up camp just beyond the shack. At 2:17, my audio feed picked up a creaking noise. It wasn't a branch. I turned my camera toward the shack. The wooden door shut tight before was now slightly ajar. My breath fogged in the warm night air. I whispered, "If anyone's there, say something." Then the door opened wider, slowly. I should have left, but content was content. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the shack's porch. The door was swaying, gently, like it was breathing. Inside was covered with dolls. I crossed the threshold. My light flickered. The walls were lined with dolls, hundreds, maybe more. Some nailed to the ceiling, all staring inward toward a chair in the middle. Someone had placed a fresh doll there. Unlike the others, it wasn't rotting. It was porcelain, clean, and its eyes were wide open. I set up the tripod, framed the shot. The doll sat perfectly still in the chair, right in the center. I hit record, but the screen was blank. I checked the focus. Nothing. Zoomed in. Still empty. But the doll was right there. I could see her. I stepped back and looked again. The screen stayed blank. The room hadn't changed, but something about it had. It was like the lens refused to see her, or she refused to be seen. And then, the floor creaked behind me. I turned. Nothing. Then a creak, a low vibration in the air. Some dolls had lifted, rising slowly off the shelves. Not toward me, toward the chair, drifting like they were being summoned. The chair was empty. The porcelain doll was gone, and the air turned thick, metallic, like blood left in the sun. Then I heard the voice. Old, wet, wheezing. "You shouldn't be inside." I bolted. As I reached the door, it slammed shut in my face. I kicked it open and ran until I hit the dock. My boat was gone. In its place, a doll, sitting upright, wearing my hat. The fisherman found me at dawn, passed out on the edge of the canal. I showed him the footage. The chair scene was missing entirely. But on my last clip, just before the battery died, you can see the shack's door, and someone standing in it. Not a doll, not the girl, Don Julián, waving me inside. I've worked the island of the dolls for 22 years. My job is simple. Sweep the trails, greet the tourists, and light the candles near Don Julián's altar. The dolls don't scare me. Not anymore. They were always here. Some came from tourists, others from locals. Some just appeared. But one morning last spring, I noticed a new doll. She hung low on the west tree, pale face, painted on tears. That wasn't strange. What was strange? She hadn't been there yesterday. And around her neck, tied with red yarn, was a tag with a name, Isabel. It made me stop. That was my wife's name. She died 2 years ago. I chalked it up to coincidence. But when I walked back past the same tree hours later, the tag was gone. The next day, there was another new doll. This one near the altar. Same red yarn. Different name, Rafael. That was my son. I felt sick. That night, I stayed after hours, hid in the shadows, waited. I wanted to catch whoever was planting these. At 2 o'clock, the air shifted. Not the wind, the stillness, like the whole island stopped breathing. Then I heard it, rope creaking, slowly, deliberately, from the trees. I turned my flashlight on, nothing moved. But when I swung the beam back, The doll labeled Isabel was facing a different direction. I could swear it had been looking left. Now, it had tilted right. I ran. I'm not ashamed of that. But the next morning, I found a third doll, hung higher than the others. Name tag, Arturo. My name. And this one had a blood stain on its tiny cloth chest. That night, I burned all 3 dolls, tossed them into a barrel, and watched them crackle into smoke. I went home, locked the doors, didn't return for 3 days. When I did, there they were, back in the same spots. No ash, no burns, still hanging, still watching. Now, I sweep the trails with my eyes down. I don't check names, but I know what happens next. They've named my wife, my son, me. The next doll, she'll be small, maybe crying, maybe dressed in white, and she'll carry the name of someone I haven't met yet. But I will. I didn't believe the stories. Not really. My uncle ran boat tours through the Xochimilco canals, and all he ever talked about was the one place he refused to take people after sundown, Isla de las Muñecas. He said it was cursed, said it changed after dark. I laughed at him, called it tourist bait. So he said, "Fine, let's go, but you're staying in the boat." It was nearly 1 when we reached the island. The dolls looked worse in the moonlight, skin peeling, eyes gouged, limbs dangling in unnatural angles, hundreds of them, some tied to trees, some floating in the water, some strung up in the mangroves like warnings. I asked if I could step out. "No," he said firmly. "You stay in the boat. You don't answer her. You don't follow her voice. If she calls your name, you pretend you don't hear." I thought he was messing with me, but he pulled his hat low, gripped the oar like a rosary, and said no more. I sat at the edge of the boat, flashlight in hand, staring at the black water lapping against the hull. It had gone still. No wind, no current, just a vast, flat darkness. That's when I heard it. A faint giggle, like a child whispering underwater. The giggle came again. Closer. Then I saw her. A girl, maybe 8 or 9, floating in the water, face up, pale, wearing a white dress soaked and heavy, clinging to her skin. Her hair fanned out in the water like black ink. The boat rocked slightly, as if nudged. Then again, harder. I whispered, "Uncle?" Nothing. And then the boat lurched to one side. Something had climbed aboard. I turned. There was no one there, but I could hear breathing. Shallow, wet, right behind me. I turned again. My breath caught. The water was full of faces, doll faces, drifting just beneath the surface. Porcelain, blank-eyed. Their mouths moved silently in the water, lips cracking open as if trying to scream. And then I felt it. A small hand sliding over my ankle, cold, delicate. It gripped lightly, then tugged, just enough to send my heart hammering. I backed into the center of the boat, scanning wildly. I aimed my flashlight at the water. It flickered and died. Then came the voice, a girl's whisper, not outside my head, but inside it. "You looked at me. Now you're mine." My mouth went dry. The dolls hanging from the trees were swaying, even though there was no wind. I heard rope tightening above me, something hanging itself. I screamed. My uncle snapped awake, eyes wild. He looked past me. Then his face collapsed. He whispered, "No, not again." Then he grabbed the oar and shoved us away from the dock, muttering prayers, fingers shaking. I turned around. She was standing on the island now, soaked dress, bare feet. She smiled, then raised her hand and waved goodbye. The next day, I checked my phone footage. Most of it was static, but in one frame, just before the flashlight failed, you can see something climbing into the boat, a pale, dripping hand. Every haunting has a witness. You've just become one. Subscribe and never be alone again.